Today the boring story named The Hotel of Sleep, a beautiful 2-hour story. Which video is good? Please like, subscribe and comment, thanks a lot. Part 1 of 30, The Sanctuary in the Storm. The rain that night was not falling, it was being hurled. It came in roaring sheets that turned the mountain road into a frantic, silvered river. Leo's car, a loyal metal beast now defeated, gave one final, wet shudder as its engine died, leaving him in a cocoon of silence that was instantly filled by the scream of the wind and the drum solo of rain on the roof. Panic, cold and sharp, began to crystallize in his chest. He was miles from anywhere, shrouded in a darkness so absolute it felt solid. Just as his breathing shallow, a brilliant fork of lightning tore the sky open. In that violent, purplish-white instant, the world was frozen. And there, illuminated like a scene from an old painting, was a sign. It was wrought iron, ornate, swinging from a stone post. The letters, elegant and slightly worn, read, "The Hotel of Sleep." An arrow pointed down a narrow, cobbled lane that seemed to disappear into the very heart of the storm-savaged forest. With no other choice, Leo turned the wheel, letting the car coast down the mysterious lane. Ancient pines, like tall, dark sentinels, leaned in close, their branches forming a tunnel. And then, the trees parted. It stood on a rise, a vision of defiance and sanctuary. It was not a modern hotel of glass and steel, but a grand, sprawling edifice of warm, honey-colored stone and dark timber. A dozen chimneys sent plumes of wood smoke into the raging air, and from every mullioned window, a soft, buttery gold light glowed. This light did not fight the darkness, it simply ignored it, creating a sphere of impossible calm. The scent of oak wood smoke and something sweet, vanilla, or perhaps baking apples, reached him even through the sealed car. He pulled up to a deep, covered porch. Not a single drop of rain could touch it. Before he could even lift a hand, the immense, oak door, carved with scenes of sleeping animals and crescent moons, swung silently inward. Part 2 of 30, The Keeper and the Key. The warmth that enveloped Leo was immediate and profound, like stepping into a sigh. The lobby was vast, with the ceiling lost in shadowy heights. A monumental stone fireplace dominated the far wall, where logs as thick as a man's thigh crackled and spat, painting the room in dancing amber light. The air was layered with scents, the clean, mineral smell of rain on stone from his clothes, the rich perfume of the burning oak, the faint, sweet spice from before, and the deep, quiet aroma of old paper and polished wood. His wet shoes sank into a carpet so thick and luxurious it silenced the world. "Welcome, traveler. You are expected." The voice was as warm and smooth as the light. Behind a vast, polished desk of dark walnut stood a man. He was ageless, with kind eyes that held a timeless patience. He wore a velvet jacket the color of a deep forest night. "I am Elias," he said, his smile gentle and knowing. "The keeper of this place." "Expected?" Leo stammered, water pooling at his feet on the intricate mosaic of the stone floor. "The storm always brings those who need to find us," Elias said, as if this were the most natural law in the world. He didn't consult a book or a computer. Instead, he opened a small drawer and produced a single, heavy key. It was brass, aged to a soft patina, and attached to a fob shaped like a perfect, smooth crescent moon. "Room 7. The Whispering Room. I believe it will suit you. Dinner is served until late in the glass conservatory. You will find what you need there." Leo took the key. Its weight was solid, comforting, a tangible promise. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elias's smile deepened, etching gentle lines around his eyes. "It is the pause between a thought and its expression. It is the silence between two notes of music. It is the space where your soul catches its breath. It is the Hotel of Sleep." He gestured toward the grand staircase. "Now, rest. Your true journey I." Part 4 of 30, Dinner Among the Rain. The gentle, insistent pull of hunger finally drew Leo from the trance of his room. Following the scent of herbs and roasting vegetables, he descended to find a corridor leading to the hotel's conservatory. It was a breathtaking space, a cathedral of glass and wrought iron. The storm raged against the high, arched ceiling, but inside, it was a haven of warmth and lush greenery. Tropical ferns brushed his shoulders, and night-blooming jasmine perfumed the humid air. Small, round tables were scattered among the foliage, lit by lanterns with flickering candlelight. A few other guests were already seated. An elderly woman with a cloud of silver hair and eyes the color of a calm sea sat alone, slowly stirring a cup of something steaming. At another table, a young boy with wide, curious eyes was whispering intently to a patient-looking man, likely his grandfather. They all glanced up as Leo entered, offering not the polite, vacant smiles of strangers, but small, knowing nods, a silent fellowship of the storm-weary, a recognition that they had all been called to the same, peculiar harbor. A server, a woman with a serene expression, appeared at his side. "What may the kitchen prepare for you, sir? Is there a menu?" Leo asked, his voice still carrying the quiet of his room. The server's smile mirrored Elias's own deep calm. "No menu. The kitchen listens. It prepares what the guest most needs. Tell me, what do you feel like? In your bones?" Leo thought for a moment. The chill of the mountain and the shock of the night still lingered in his marrow. "Something deeply warm," he said. "A stew, perhaps. Something that feels like a hearth in a bowl." "Of course," the server said, and vanished silently among the ferns. The stew that arrived was a masterpiece of simplicity and depth. It was rich and dark, with tender meat that fell apart at the touch of a spoon, carrots that tasted of earth and sweetness, and a broth that seemed to distill the very essence of comfort. With it came a loaf of crusty bread, still warm from the oven, and butter that was pale gold and flecked with salt. As he ate, listening to the frantic drumming of the rain on the glass roof above transform into a soothing, rhythmic patter, Leo felt a profound sense of belonging settle over him. He was not a customer, he was a guest, in the oldest and most sacred sense of the word. Part 5 of 30, the first dream and the figure by the stream. Back in the whispering room, Leo changed into the soft, linen pajamas laid out on the bed. They felt like a sigh against his skin. He slipped between sheets of cool, crisp cotton and a duvet that embraced him like a warm cloud. The fire had died to a nest of pulsating crimson embers, and the only light came from the moon-drenched forest in his window. As he drifted on the edge of sleep, the whisper from the glass grew stronger. It was no longer just a sensation, it was a gentle, magnetic pull, an invitation. The boundary between the room and the forest seemed to grow thin, then porous, then vanish. He found himself standing on the mossy path of that very forest. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of damp soil, decaying leaves, and living pine. The rain here was a gentle, misty kiss on his face. He felt no fear, only a deep, resonant curiosity. He began to walk. The moss was springy and cool under his bare feet. Fireflies, like lost stars, blinked their slow coat in the ferns. After a timeless period, the path led him to a small, clear stream. The water chimed musically as it flowed over smooth, dark stones. And there, on the opposite bank, sat a figure. It was shadowy and vague, lacking clear features, but its posture spoke of a profound weariness. It was hunched over, as if carrying a great weight on its back. A large, lumpy, and impossibly heavy-looking sack rested beside it. The figure did not feel malevolent, but profoundly sad, and somehow, deeply familiar. Before Leo could call out or take a step across the stream, the dream began to dissolve. The forest faded, the sound softened, and he was pulled back across the threshold of sleep. He awoke in the dark room, not with a start, but with a deep, quiet knowing. The figure by the stream was important. It was a part of his journey here. And he knew, with the unshakable certainty of dreams, that he would see it again. Part 6 of 30, morning, and the rule of the hotel. Leo awoke to a soft, pearly gray light. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and a gentle, misty drizzle that blurred the lines between the hotel and the mountain. His forest window had shifted with the hours. The deep night was now a serene, fog-draped dawn. Dewdrops clung to every fern and spiderweb, each one a tiny, perfect lens holding the whole world in miniature. The peace was so absolute he felt no urgency to move. When he finally descended, he found Elara, the silver-haired woman, in the sunny morning dining room. She was gazing out a real window at the veiled mountains. "It changes, doesn't it?" she said, not turning. "Your room's view." Leo sat nearby. "It does. How did you know?" She turned, her eyes holding a gentle, knowing light. "I am in room 3. memory suite. My window shows a sunlit garden from my childhood. It feels more real to me than this mountain. She introduced herself. This place, Leo, it doesn't just give you a bed. It reflects a piece of your soul back to you, a piece you thought was lost or broken. She didn't elaborate, but Leo understood. He had glimpsed his own lost piece by the stream. Later, he found Elias in the library, a room that smelled of wisdom and dust. "I trust you slept within the window?" Elias asked, not looking up from a large, leather-bound book. "How did you? The windows are not for looking out." Elias interrupted gently. "They are for looking in. They show the landscape of your inner world. Room 7 is for those who need to listen to their own quiet thoughts, which are often drowned out. The forest, the whisper, the stream, that is the geography of you." "And the figure?" Leo asked, his voice hushed. "A guest of your own making. You brought it with you. The hotel simply provides the safe, quiet space for you to finally meet it." Elias closed the book with a soft thud. "There is only one rule here, Leo, and it is the key to everything. The hotel gives you what you need, not always what you want. To receive, you must first let go. Remember that." Part 7 of 30, The Dark Corridor and the Friendly Stars. Emboldened by Elias's words, Leo spent the day exploring the hotel's hushed corridors. He passed doors with small, engraved plaques, the Chamber of Stillness, the Room of Lost Laughter, the Clock Room. Peering into the latter, he saw dozens of timepieces, grandfather clocks, delicate porcelain mantel clocks, a water clock with a steady drip, each showing a deliberately different hour. In the center of the room, a man sat in a chair, simply watching the conflicting hands with an expression of profound relief. Leo backed away quietly, respecting the sacred silence. In a cozy sunroom, he found the young boy, Sam, coloring with intense concentration. "My room has stars," Sam announced without looking up. "On the ceiling. They glow. And there's no dark corners. Not even one." His grandfather explained, "He's afraid of the dark at home. Here, his room can't be dark. It's teaching him." Later, Leo found them at the mouth of a long, wood-paneled hallway he'd never seen. It was unlit, its far end swallowed by shadow. Sam was peering in, his small hand tightly clutching his grandfather's. "It's the dark corridor," the grandfather said to Leo. "Sam thinks he needs to walk it. The hotel suggested it." Sam looked up, his face a mask of serious courage. "My room is too bright all the time. I need to know that a little dark is okay." Leo knelt, bringing himself to Sam's eye level. "Would you like me to stand right here at this end?" he asked, his voice soft. "So, you always know exactly where the light is?" Sam considered this, then gave a firm, brave nod. "Yes, please." Part 8 of 30, The Memory Suite in the Rose. While Sam prepared for his walk, Leo visited Elara in room 3. Stepping inside was like walking into a perfect summer morning decades past. The room was the garden, sunlight streamed through invisible skylights, bees hummed, and the air was heavy with the scent of roses and cut grass. In the center stood a single, wrought iron bench. "It's not a memory of a place," Elara said, her voice full of wonder. "It's the memory of a feeling. The feeling of being perfectly safe, and perfectly loved." She led him to a rosebush heavy with crimson blooms. "For years, I could remember my mother's face, but I had lost the sound of her voice. This morning, I heard her laugh. Just a flicker of it, from over by the hollyhocks. A tear traced a path through her smile. The hotel isn't just showing me the past. It's giving me back the pieces I thought time had stolen." She pointed to a patch of soft grass where a small, weathered wooden chest now sat. It appeared today. "I know it holds the core of it all, the memory I'm most afraid to face because I want it so badly." She looked at Leo, her old eyes clear. "Elias's rule. I know I must let go of the fear before I can receive what's inside. But it's very heavy, letting go of a fear you've held for so long." Part 9 of 30, A Walk in the Friendly Dark. Back at the dark corridor, Sam took his first step. Then another. His small footsteps were whispers on the polished wood. About 20 feet in, he stopped, a silhouette against the distant light. "It's just a hallway," his voice floated back, laced not with fear, but with dawning realization. As he took another step, the corridor responded. From the baseboards, tiny pinpricks of light began to glow, not the harshness of electric bulbs, but the soft, bioluminescent gleam of fireflies or distant, friendly stars. With each step Sam took, a new cluster of lights winked on, illuminating beautiful, painted murals on the walls, a wise old owl winking, a family of foxes curled in sleep, a badger peeking from its jetsam giggled, the sound pure and bright in the hushed space. "They're lighting up for me." He reached the middle, now surrounded by a soft, celestial map of light. He turned and waved triumphantly at Leo and his grandfather, who were framed in the golden doorway. Then, with newfound confidence, he marched all the way to the far end, where another door awaited, slightly ajar. He had not conquered the dark by banishing it, but by discovering its secret, gentle heart. Part 10 of 30, the second dream, the weight of the sack. That night, Leo's dream was more vivid. The pull of the whispering glass was a gentle tide, and he drifted easily into the forest. He went straight to the stream. The figure was there, still hunched, the sack beside it like a monstrous growth. "You came back," the figure said, its voice the echo of Leo's own, strained and tired. "I did," Leo replied, sitting on the moss near it, but not too close. "What's in the sack?" The figure let out a sound that was half sigh, half sob. "Everything. The things I should have done. The words I got wrong that keep talking at night. The worry that sits on my chest. The constant noise in my head that says not good enough. It's so loud. And it's so heavy." The figure lifted the sack an inch, and it crunched ominously, like dead leaves in broken glass. Leo's heart ached with a recognition so deep it was physical. This was his own anxiety, his inner critic, given form, a lonely, burdened creature he'd been running from for years. "Can you put it down?" he asked softly. The figure seemed to shrink. "I don't know how. I've carried it for so long, I think I'm part of it now." Leo woke before dawn, the words "I don't know how" echoing in the quiet room. The figure wasn't a monster to fight. It was a prisoner to be freed. And he was its only warden. Part 11 of 30, the Chamber of Stillness. Haunted by the dream, Leo sought out the Chamber of Stillness. It was a perfect, circular room with a domed ceiling, the walls and floor upholstered in soft, gray velvet. When the heavy door sealed behind him, the outside world vanished. The silence was not an absence of sound, but a palpable presence, thick, soft, and immense. At first, the noise the figure had described erupted in his mind, a frantic jumble of to-do lists, replayed conversations, financial worries, and a critical, sneering commentary on all of it. The silence of the room seemed to press against this mental storm. It was uncomfortable, almost violent. He wanted to flee. But he stayed. He focused on his breath, as Elias had quietly suggested at breakfast. In and out. Slowly, the frantic thoughts began to lose their edge. They didn't disappear, but they began to drift across the vast, quiet space of his mind like clouds, not tornadoes. For minutes at a time, there was nothing but the rhythm of his breath and the soft, velvety silence holding him. It was terrifying in its emptiness, then suddenly, liberating. This was the space between the noise. This was the silence his soul had been craving. He left the chamber an hour later, feeling strangely hollowed out and light, as if he had shed a skin he didn't know he was wearing. Part 12 of 30, the unlocking, word of Sam's bravery and Leo's quiet quest seemed to weave through the hotel. That afternoon, Elara found Leo in the library. Her hands were steady, but her eyes held a storm of their own. "It's time," she said. "Will you sit with me while I open it? I don't think I'm meant to face this memory alone." Together, they returned to the memory-sweet garden. The wooden chest sat under the rosebush, looking both innocent and monumental. Elara knelt before it, Leo a supportive presence at her shoulder. She took a deep, shuddering breath, smelling the roses, and let it out slowly. She was letting go of the fear. Her fingers unlatched the clasp. As she lifted the lid, the garden did not vanish, but intensified. The light grew richer, the scents more vivid. Then, the memory overlaid reality. They were no longer just observers, they were immersed. A younger Elara, a girl of 7 with grass-stained knees, was twirling in a sunbeam, her laughter a bright, clear bell. A woman, her mother, was hanging laundry on a line, her back to them, humming. The child tripped and fell, a sharp cry cutting the air. The scene froze for a heart-wrenching second. Then the mother turned, her face a portrait of gentle concern. She didn't scold. She knelt, gathered the sobbing girl into her lap, and began to sing a soft, silly song about bumblebees and daisies as she cleaned the tiny scrape. "There now, my brave girl," the mother whispered, her voice the most beautiful sound Leo had ever heard, a vibration of pure, unconditional love. "All mended. See? The world is still beautiful." The memory faded, leaving them back in the garden, the chest now empty. Silent tears streamed down Elara's face, but she was radiant. "I had forgotten her voice," she wept. "For 20 years, I only remembered the fall, the shock, the pain. I forgot the mending." She looked at Leo, her soul in her eyes. "It wasn't the pain I was afraid to remember. It was the love. It was so vast, I thought. It would break me to feel it again." She placed a hand over her heart. "But it didn't break me. It put me back together." Part 13 of 30, the third dream, what if we looked? That night, Leo didn't just dream, he descended with purpose. The forest was vibrant, the stream full and cheerful. The figure was waiting, but it was not hunched. It stood by the water, looking at the flowing current as if seeing it for the first time. She remembered the mending, the figure said, its voice still Leo's, but clearer, less frayed. "Yes," Leo said, standing beside it. "The love was bigger than the hurt. Isn't it always?" Leo mused, the truth of Elara's lesson settling in him. "We just remember the scrape." The figure nodded slowly. It hefted the sack. "Most of what's in here. I think it's just old scrapes. I've been carrying the scap for years, thinking it was the wound." For the first time, the figure turned its head slightly towards Leo. Its features were still vague, but the posture was of curiosity, not defeat. "What if we looked? Just looked at it?" Leo felt a thrill that was not fear, but the courage of possibility. This was the true invitation. Not to battle the burden, but to understand it. To transform it. He met the figure's gaze in the dappled dreamlight. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "Let's look." Part 14 of 30, the contents of the sack. The figure knelt and fumbled with the coarse rope. Leo knelt beside it, the moss cool and damp. The air in the dream forest seemed to hold its breath. The knot came loose, and the sack fell open. There was no flood of darkness, no swarm of horrors. The contents were heartbreakingly mundane, which made them more terrible. Crumpled pieces of paper covered in dense, anxious handwriting. Smooth, cold worrystones worn down from constant friction. Shards of cloudy, sharp glass. A heavy, gray cloak that felt damp. The figure pulled out a handful of papers. "See," it whispered, its tone full of a weary shame. "It's just noise." Leo took one. The ink was frantic. "They'll find out you're a fraud. You should have said something better. Why can't you just be normal?" The voice of his inner critic, made manifest. But here, in the calm forest, the words seemed petty, small. He held the paper over the clear stream. The ink began to blur, the paper itself seeming to wilt. "This doesn't belong here," Leo said. He let go. The paper touched the water and dissolved into a wisp of indigo smoke that was carried away. A profound lightness, like a first breath after being underwater, washed through him. Part 15 of 30, the unburdening. Wordlessly, they worked. The figure handed him items. A worrystone, icy and dense with phantom dread. Leo felt its charge and dropped it into the stream. It sank without a trace. A shard of glass, the memory of a cruel, offhand comment from a former boss. He saw his own distorted face in it, then let it go. It vanished with a soft pigwash each release. The figure beside him became a little more defined, a little more solid. The heavy, gray cloak was last. The figure lifted it with effort. "This is the weight of expectation," it said. "Trying to be what everyone wants. The should and the must." It was immense, woven from leaden threads. Together, they held it over the water. "We don't have to carry this either," Leo said, a newfound certainty in his voice. They released it. The cloak didn't sink. It billowed out like a gray ghost, then unraveled into a million silvery threads that scattered on the breeze like dandelion seeds, catching the dreamlight. The last of the oppressive weight lifted from Leo's spirit. The sack was empty, just a limp piece of canvas on the moss. Part 16 of 30, the figure transformed. The figure, his inner self, straightened to its full height. It was now clearly a man, with Leo's own face, but peaceful. The lines of worry were gone, the eyes clear and calm. He looked at his empty hands, then at Leo, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face, a smile Leo hadn't seen on his own reflection in years. "It's gone," his inner self said, wonder in his voice. "It was never needed here," Leo replied, his own heart full. His inner self looked around at the sun-dappled forest, the chattering stream, the path leading deeper into the woods towards a lake he could now glimpse. "What do I do now?" "Whatever you want," Leo said. "You're free." The man who was his shadow nodded. He looked down the path, then back at Leo. "I think I'll follow the stream. See where it goes. I'd like to see the lake." He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. The touch was warm, real, a connection. "Thank you for not being afraid of me." "Thank you," Leo said, his throat tight, "for showing me what I was carrying." His inner self turned and began to walk down the path, his steps light. He didn't vanish, he became part of the landscape, a peaceful traveler in the geography of Leo's soul. Leo watched him until he rounded a bend, then woke up. Part 17 of 30, a new dawn. Leo awoke not to the whisper, but to a deep, resonant quiet that felt full and alive. Sunlight streamed into the whispering room, painting the walls with gold. He looked immediately at the window. The transformation was breathtaking. The forest was drenched in morning light, every leaf a vibrant, backlit emerald. The path was clear and inviting, winding through meadows of wildflowers to the shore of a vast, mirror-like lake that perfectly reflected a cloudless blue sky. There was no shadow, no hidden figure, only peaceful, integrated beauty. The room itself seemed brighter, the air lighter, as if it had exhaled a breath it had been holding for years. When he met Elias for tea in the conservatory, the keeper didn't ask. He simply poured the fragrant chamomile and said, "The view from room 7 is particularly lovely this morning." "It is," Leo said, a full, unburdened smile on his face. "I can see all the way to the lake." Elias nodded, a knowing glint in his eye. "The lake is always there. We just have to clear the path to it." He stirred his own tea. "The hotel has one more gift for you, and for all our guests, tonight. We call it the quiet hour. From midnight until 1, the entire hotel falls into a deeper silence. It is a powerful time for integration, for making the internal shift permanent." Part 18 of 30, the quiet hour. As midnight approached, a single, resonant bell chimed softly through the hotel's corridors, a note that hung in the air like a promise. Leo, following an unspoken instruction, sat on the floor of his room by the dying fire. He knew Sam and his grandfather would be in the chamber of stillness, embracing the friendly dark. Elara would be in her garden, feeling the enduring sun on her face. Thomas, the man from the clock room, would be in his room, finally at peace with time. For Leo, the quiet hour was not about doing, but about being. He felt the deep silence of the hotel wrap around him, but he also felt it connect him to the others. It was as if their collective healing vibrations strengthened each individual thread in an invisible tapestry. He felt the empty sack, the dissolved papers, the scattered threads of the cloak. He felt not their absence as a void, but the positive presence of the peace that had replaced them. He visualized his inner self walking by the lake, at home. In that profound collective silence, the final shift settled into his bones, into his breath. The critic was gone, not defeated, but understood and released. In its place was a gentle, observant awareness. When the bell chimed once more at 1 a.m., Leo opened his eyes. He was the same man, and yet entirely new. He was simply and completely whole. Part 19 of 30, A Breakfast of Light. The morning after the quiet hour, the hotel felt settled, complete. In the sun-drenched dining room, the change was visible in everyone. Sam chattered about how the stars in his room had formed a new constellation, a bear that winked at him. Thomas sat calmly, occasionally glancing at his reflection in a polished teaspoon with a small, contented smile. But it was Elara who radiated the most profound change. She seemed to have shed years, her movements fluid. She held a single, perfect crimson rose. "Good morning, Leo," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "It's a beautiful day for a farewell, isn't it?" The word hung in the air. Farewell. No one had said it aloud, but they all knew. Their work here was done. The hotel, in its infinite wisdom, was preparing to send them back into the world, repaired. Part 20 of 30, The Parting Gifts. Elias entered, carrying a simple wooden box. He placed it on the sideboard. "The path ahead is clear for each of you now," he said. "Before you go, a token. Not a souvenir, but a tool. A piece of the piece you found here, to remind you how to find it again out there." He went to each guest. For Sam, a smooth, black stone with a single star-like crystal embedded in it. For your pocket. When shadows seem deep, remember you carry your own light. For Thomas, a tiny, circular mirror, its back engraved, reflect kindly. For Elara, a delicate glass vial that seemed to hold the very scent of her rose garden, a captured memory. Finally, Elias stood before Leo. From the box, he lifted a smooth, gray river stone. It fit perfectly in Leo's palm, still cool from the stream it symbolized. "A paperweight for your thoughts," Elias said, his gaze knowing. "When the noise of the world tries to crowd in, hold this. Remember the sound of the stream carrying the noise away." Part 21 of 30, The Last Look. Leo packed his bag, the stone a comforting weight in his jacket pocket. He took one last walk through the whispering room. The window showed the lake at noon, perfectly still. He placed a hand on the warm glass. "Thank you," he whispered, to the room, to the forest within, to himself. Downstairs, the others gathered in the lobby. There were no long goodbyes, only looks of deep understanding. Sam hugged Leo's legs. "I'm not scared of my closet anymore," he declared. Elara kissed his cheek. "Listen for the love," she reminded him softly. Together, they turned to the great oak door. Elias stood beside it. "The door will always be here," he said, his voice barely a murmur. "In the space between a thought and a dream. You know the way back." Part 22 of 30, The Return. Leo was the last to step out. He crossed the threshold and felt the change immediately. The air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and wet earth, not vanilla and old books. He turned back. The Hotel of Sleep stood as solid and beautiful as ever. But as he watched, its edges seemed to shimmer, like a mirage. For a second, it looked less like stone and more like a beautifully detailed painting on the air, existing just slightly out of phase with the mountain. Then it stabilized, but the feeling remained a haven in a fold of reality. His car started on the first try. He sat for a moment, the streamstone heavy in his pocket. He looked at the passenger seat, half expecting to see his inner self there, but it was empty. He was alone, yet for the first time, he did not feel lonely. He was accompanied by his own piece, Part 23 of 30, The City in the Stone. The city greeted him with its familiar symphony of honks, shouts, and perpetual motion. At his desk, the world's noise began to press in a frantic email, a looming deadline, the buzz of a million anxieties. He felt the old tension start to coil in his shoulders, a ghost of a habit. Then he remembered. He reached into his pocket and closed his fingers around the smooth, cool stone. Instantly, it was not just a memory, but a sensory anchor, the whisper of the forest glass, the crackle of the fire, the taste of the perfect stew, the profound silence of the quiet hour. The tension uncoiled. The noise receded, not gone, but placed at a respectful distance. He took a deep, clean breath. The stone on his desk was a tiny embassy of the hotel, a treaty with calmness. Part 24 of 30, a year later, the ripple, a year passed. Leo kept the stone on his desk. One rainy evening, feeling overwhelmed, he found himself speaking to a friend over the phone. "It feels like I'm carrying this sack of everything I'm doing wrong," he heard himself say, and then he laughed softly. He told his friend about the hotel. Not all of it, but the idea of it, a place that gives you what you need, if you let go. His friend, listening, sighed. "That sounds incredible. I need to find a place like that." "You already have it," Leo said, surprising himself. "It's not a place on a map. It's the quiet you make for yourself. It's the moment you decide the old worry doesn't get to live in your head anymore." He realized he was quoting Elias, and the truth of it resonated in his bones. The hotel's magic wasn't confined to its stones. It was a virus of peace, and he was a carrier. Part 25 of 30, The Storm Returns, Another Year. Leo was driving on a business trip when a sudden, violent summer storm erupted, forcing him to pull over on a lonely road. The wind howled, the rain was a solid wall, and lightning cracked the sky. It was a mirror of that first night. A strange calm settled over him. He wasn't afraid. He reached into his pocket, his fingers finding the stone. He closed his eyes, not to escape, but to remember. In his mind's eye, he didn't see the hotel first. He saw the lake. The perfectly calm, sun-drenched lake from his window. He held that image, feeling its stillness spread from his core outwards. The storm raged, but inside the car, there was a bubble of quiet. He knew, with absolute certainty, that if he needed it, the sign would appear. The lane would be there. The door would open. But in that moment, he didn't need the sanctuary. He had brought the sanctuary with him. Part 26 of 30, The Invitation. Months later, a small, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. There was no return address. Inside, a single sheet of thick, elegant paper. In spidery, familiar handwriting, it read, "The quiet has been noticed. The garden continues to bloom. The stars remember their friend. Should you ever wish to visit not as a guest in need, but as a keeper in residence, the door is open. There is always a room for one who understands the silence." Elio held the note, a warmth spreading through his chest. It was not a summons, but an acknowledgement. A recognition that the healing was not a one-time event, but a state of being he had learned to maintain. The hotel was not just a refuge for the broken, but a place of communion for the whole. Part 27 of 30, Passing the Stone. On a hike with his nephew, a boy of about Sam's age who was afraid of thunderstorms, they were caught in a sudden downpour. The boy began to cry, panicking. Leo led him under a rocky overhang. He didn't offer empty platitudes. "Here," Leo said, pulling the smooth gray stone from his pocket. He placed it in the boy's small, cold hand. "Hold this. It's a special stone. It's from a place where storms are just music, and inside, it's always warm and safe. This stone remembers that place. Close your eyes and feel it." The boy, sniffling, clutched the stone. He closed his eyes tightly. Leo spoke softly, describing a cozy room with a fire, a window looking into a beautiful forest. Slowly, the boy's breathing slowed. He wasn't just listening, he was there. When he opened his eyes, the fear was gone, replaced by wonder. "It worked," he whispered. Leo smiled. "Keep it," he said. The hotel's gift was not to be hoarded, but to be passed on. Part 28 of 30, The Dream Visit. That night, Leo dreamed. He was not in the forest by the stream, but standing on the shore of the lake, the water lapping gently at his feet. His inner self was there, sitting on a sun-warmed rock, skipping stones. He looked healthy, strong, at peace. "You gave the stone away," his inner self said, not looking up. "I did," Leo replied. "Good." His inner self smiled, a flash of white in the sun. "That's how it stays real. By giving it away." He stood and joined Leo at the water's edge. They stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples over the mirrored water. No words were needed. The integration was complete. Part 29 of 30, The Eternal Hotel. Years turned into decades. Leo lived a full life, a life with joys and sorrows, but one anchored by a deep, inner lake of calm. He never tried to find the hotel on a map again. He didn't need to. He felt its presence in the first quiet sip of morning coffee, in the space between sleeping and waking, in the moment of choosing kindness over irritation. He understood now that the Hotel of Sleep was never just a building. It was an echo of a fundamental truth within every human soul, the need for sanctuary, the capacity for healing, and the eternal availability of peace when one is brave enough to be quiet and listen. It existed in 1,000 forms, in a kind word, in a helping hand, in a forgiven mistake, in a breath taken before a reaction. Part 30 of 30, The Last Whisper. An old man now, Leo sat in his garden on a warm evening. His grandchildren played at his feet. One of them, a little girl, pointed to a stone on his garden table, a smooth, gray river stone he had found long ago. "What's that, Grandpa?" Leo picked it up, its familiar weight a comfort. "That," he said, his voice soft, "is a key." "A key to what?" "To a very special place. A place that's always there when you need it most." He placed the stone in her small hand and closed her fingers around it. "It's a place where the rain sounds like a lullaby, and the windows look into your very best dreams. Where you learn that the bravest thing you can do is sometimes to just be still. And that inside, you are always safe, you are always warm, and you are always, always home." The girl looked at the stone, then at her grandfather's kind, peaceful eyes, and she smiled, sensing a great and wonderful secret. Leo leaned back, listening to the children's laughter and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, a sound not so different from a whisper in a quiet room, long ago, promising rest. And he knew, with the quiet certainty of a setting sun, that the door was never truly closed, and the light in the window would shine for anyone who remembered to look for it. Thanks to watching this beautiful boring story. Please like, subscribe and comment.